Sinus infection.
That's not contagious.
No.
I say, it is, keep it to yourself. Can't afford to lecture being ill. He does, he does.
Good.
I now call the Norton City Council meeting to order for Monday, November 27th, 2017. The time is 7 p.m. Is that thing working?
It is.
Okay,
Yep.
now it is. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Mrs. Richards, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Casey,
Here.
Mr. McGlone,
Here.
Mr. Kernan,
Mr. Kernan is excused.
Mr. Pearson, Mr. Towsley,
Here.
Mr. Pelot,
Here.
and Ms. Whipke.
Here. The agenda for tonight's meeting's been rearranged so that we can accommodate an executive session. So at this time, we're going to go and talk about that. We're going to have an executive session preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment as defined in Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22 G4 and Section 3.12 of the Norton City Charter. When we will reconvene and continue the regular council meeting after the executive session, and I want to remind everybody that the audio and the camera remains on. So if you don't want to have whatever your conversations are picked up, please exit out in the hallway. And at this time, I would like to have a roll call seat to go in.
Didn't have a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Ms. Whipke,
Thank you.
Mr. Pelot,
Yes.
Mr. Casey,
Yes.
Mr. McGlone.
Yes.
Mr. Pearson.
Yes.
And Mr. Towsley.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. At this time, I would like to invite, Mayor Zita is not here tonight, Mr. Fowler, Mr. Messner, Mr. Markey, Mr. Paul Jackson, and the council-elect, Mr. Gaynor and Mr. Corrant, to attend. That stated, we're going into executive session now. The time is 7:03. We going in the back or up here?
Conference room, I believe.
Whichever's better.
Okay, let's do it here. You like the conference room back? Okay, we're going to the conference room. Conference room. Just mine.
Because that's always been pretty standard practice. Yeah, oh, I knew that.
faithful and early.
That would require. Oh, and you guys have a bargain. There's a huge, I spent all night at the week with my mom.
Green Bay
Fourth of July. Tell you what, I quit. Just for the very nice. You know, conductors are starting almost 48 now. That's a suck job.
Never perfect yet.
There's,
For reconvening the regular council meeting, the time is 7:26, and we'll carry on where we left off. Committee of Whole reports from standing committees. Are there any reports from the committee chairs? First thing up, Mr. Messer's here, is the 2018 budget review continued on, and we're going to be discussing what the 3 fire department budgets, finance department, capital projects, and the sewer 128 fund. If you'd like to take over, Mr. Messner.
Thank you, Mrs. Whitke. Chief Schultz is here. Just a couple of things to explain or to refresh council's memory. First, the fire department, as I believe you all are aware, runs on 2 levies. Those levies were basically, we get certified by the tax commission, Summit County Tax Commission, so we know what we have to spend. The budgets are basically broken down. They're split between the Fund 105, which is the 2012 Fire EMS Levy Fund, and Fund 106, which is the EMS, non-capital. 65-35, 65 to Fund 105, 35 to Fund 106. A question came up this morning, and I'll explain briefly. On page 53, A and B, you'll recall that prior to the 2012 levy, we had a 2007 levy. There were funds left in those accounts. We've done a pretty good job. We started out 2017 with about 83,000 in 108, Fund 108, and about 153,000 in Fund 109. Those were monies that were left over after those levies stopped. We still have money per se in the bank. So Chief Schultz and I have worked to try to use up those funds, save the regular budgets, and use up those funds. We still have 25,000 left in 108, 65,000 in 109. To make it easy for everybody, rather than split it line for line for line, I basically am just showing the total amounts, but suffice it to say, there are several different lines that we can draw from in there for those amounts of money. So with that being said, you should have picked up the new copies that were in your mailbox. Thanks to Mr. Towsley, pointed out a couple of inconsistencies to me this morning. So I recast those 3 budgets. They are now all balancing to the bottom line for the actual numbers. And it really didn't change the 2018 budget. So I will stop there, and Chief Schultz, if you have anything that you would like to say, or we can entertain your questions right away.
Chief, other than the squad that we're redoing the box, what do you see as your needs for other vehicles within the department going forward? I mean, do you see something coming up within this next year, next couple years?
Not within the next year. So the biggest thing that we have coming up is my vehicle was due to be replaced. Mr. Fowler and I have talked about it. We're going to put that off and put off the replacement of an engine so we can purchase new heart monitors.
On the engine you're putting off, what's the pump rating for insurance purposes?
1,500 gallons a minute.
What's it currently rated at?
What will it
You had it
pump?
tested, what,
Yeah.
is it still 15?
Oh, yeah, yes.
It's meeting the
Yeah,
insurance.
oh, yes. Yep, they're tested every year. It
I don't
passed.
think we should put something off with your pumps then, okay.
No, it pumps really well.
I've got a simple question. We're running behind on the administrator in 2017. Is that because we changed the holiday pay? Is that a reflection of that? Either of you know?
The admin officer pay, Mr. Towsley, is that what you're asking?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so that's just reflecting the,
And understand as well, Mr. Fowler's salary, and you probably remember this, Mr. Fowler's salary is split between the admin officer budget, the fire department, the
Right.
police department, and the service department, a percentage. Since he is the safety officer.
The zero amount listed under the repair and maintenance equipment, that's because we took that out of the 108 and 109 levies.
Yeah, I moved all of the big ticket items that I could last year to 108 and 109, which is repair and maintenance, auditor and treasurer fees. So we just left it in there in the same accounts this year, or for next year, I'm sorry.
And I believe fuel, wasn't fuel in there as well?
I believe fuel also.
Fuel.
What was your percentage of increase for calls this year? And
Well,
What do you-
I was looking at that this morning. From 2015 to 2016, we had a 6% increase, and as of this morning, we are 12% above where we were last year.
Is that due
Why do they
to
have-
squad or structural fires?
Mostly med runs. The structure fires are down in numbers, which is good. It's mostly EMS runs.
So that would account for most of your overtime?
Yeah, very, very little of the overtime is, most of it is shift fill, where somebody's sick or calls off. Once we get to 3 people, we will pay somebody overtime to work. And that's our minimum we'll run at is 4. Which really, it kind of limits us, but
But isn't that what our mutual assistance is for? I mean, if
Oh,
you're running short, you can call for assistance from neighboring departments.
oh, we
They
still,
give-
yeah, we still call for assistance. At 4 guys, 1 EMS call usually will take the crew out. So the next call will go to, whoever is closest to where the call is located. And same with structure fires. The one the other night, there was Barberton was there, Chippewa, Copley.
Out of the 12% increase for the EMS, how much of that do you think is related to the construction been going on?
I couldn't give you a actual number, but it's definitely impacted our call volume. We spent quite a bit of time out there this year. I'll run all of our numbers at the end of the year and be able to tell, how much our accidents are up from last year. But I think it's going to be a pretty considerable number.
And professional services is going to raise 17,000. What do you have projected there for?
Professional services, like copy machine maintenance contract comes out of that, IT purchases.
We have 25,000 also going for the, roughly 25, for the equipment service contract. What contracts do you have coming up?
We have a equipment service contract on our heart monitors. We have an equipment service contract on our Cascade system, our HVAC system.
Now, I know you write a ton of grants, and I always give you credit for that. Are you planning on writing anything for next year that we can utilize against the budget?
Hopefully, right now, there's a battle at the federal level whether these grants are going to continue on.
Right.
I got an email last week about it. I'm not sure where they're at with it, but if the money's there, we're going to go after it. That's for sure.
All three of these budgets are up considerably. Does that reflect the extra money that you're pulling from old budgets? How does that reflect on that? Is that because you're pulling more from them, or do those actually help keep that number low? You understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, this keeps, the 108 and 109 keeps it down. And the increase in the budget, everything we do is directly related to call volume. The busier are, the more fuel we get, the more supplies we need, the more maintenance the trucks get.
Are you going to be able to sustain at these rates?
Through next year, we definitely, in 18, we'll probably have to address the 2007 levy.
To the call volume, would you say can be contributed directly to the construction on the major routes?
But I couldn't give you
Asking, is this a temporary influx of calls because of the construction and accidents, et cetera?
I'm sure it has increased because of the construction. Once it goes away, I don't know. We'll have 3 lanes of people driving too fast.
Is that why you budgeted almost $100,000 extra in payroll between full-time and part-time?
Yeah.
You're not planning on hiring anymore, or are we fully staffed right now?
We are fully staffed. We need more part-time personnel, but we don't have the funds for them.
What's the numbers do you have, full-time versus part-time?
There are 12 full-time firefighters and 22 part-time.
Now, I thought 2 years ago,
Mr.
we
Pearson?
had this discussion.
Mr. Pearson, can you put your microphone down so people can hear you?
I said, I thought 2 years ago we had this discussion, by going full-time, it would alleviate part-time people. There seems to be an increase in it.
Now that we discussed going full-time to get more continuity, but I said then we would never be a full-time department. We will always probably have more part-time employees than we do full-time.
Would it behoove us to go paid call instead of having part-time? To dictate your labor force as needed to volume?
That's why we have part-time now, the paid call.
But if part-time comes in, they're getting what, a minimum of how many hours? I mean, if you call somebody, there's a set standard, isn't it? I mean, if you would
For a
call me to come
callback?
in as a part-time employee, I'd be guaranteed 4 hours, 6
No,
hours, 8 hours?
1 hour.
Okay.
So if we do a callback and you come in, you get 1 hour. That's it.
You think that's better than paid call where they just called as needed then?
Nowadays, you can't, the paid call is a thing of the past. Unfortunately, because of all the requirements for EMS and fire and all the extra cards. The people in the departments that are still trying to do the paid call are struggling bad.
But don't they all have to meet the same standard licensing regardless if you're a professional? You have to have your firefighter's license, your EMS license?
Some departments don't require you to be a paramedic. They don't require you to be a 240 firefighter.
Yeah, but then you can't be used dual purpose, because you can't, for liability purpose, if you're not a paramedic, be on that squad unless you're driving it, correct? So I take it all our people have all the minimum requirements,
Yes.
state licensing?
Yeah, we have two guys that have been there a long time that they have their 240 firefighter, but they're not paramedics.
Along that line of questioning, all of our people, part-time, are they CDL qualified?
In the state of Ohio, you don't have to be CDL qualified. That's why they have EVOC courses.
Right, but doesn't that only apply if the siren in the emergency vehicle is moving in an emergency situation?
Now, EVOC covers them no matter what they're doing. Ohio came up with an EVOC course to avoid cities having to pay for 34 CDL licenses at $70-some a piece.
I was thinking for insurance purposes myself. Good.
But they're all covered. We wrote a grant. They have been through the best driver's training that we have in this area, so.
Mr. Messner, on Fund 106, 5230, 51172, Fire EMS part-time. This is on page 51, fourth from the top.
Great.
Unencumbered for 2017 is 99,000. We budgeted 203,000. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, now we're budgeting an additional 3,000 for 2018, taking it up to 206,000. I was just wondering what the reasoning behind that was.
Well, part of that is union negotiation, taking some of that into effect. Also, part of the 99 in that, we still have several pays yet to go, so we'll use the better part of that 99 probably before the end of the year. But we've had a couple of changes in the some of, and I can't remember all their names, but we've had Andy Howe left us to go to Copley. Jeff
Yes.
Kuykendall moved up from part-time. So we've had some pay differentials come into effect there. Less money in that, so not quite the increase that you probably would normally expect in that. But the unencumbered 99,417.93 is basically, as of the end of October, what we have left to use that will be used as payrolls are, that will come down.
Right. I'm just looking at, if you look at history, 2014 actual 240,000, 15 169, but then it dropped to 109 and 16, or excuse me, 120 actual and 16.
And part of that too was, you recall at one point in time, I think we had, remind me, Chief, 32 or 33 part-time through that stretch. And
Yeah,
that
at one
dropped,
point there
but
were 33.
9 of those went into full-time and dropped out of part-time.
Right. And that's kind of my question. But we're still budgeting 206,000 when actual for last year was 120. Budget for this year is 203, and we still have 99 left, so 100,000 left, which just puts us 103,000 spent so far.
Yeah.
So
I see
why are
what-
we going 206 for next year?
I see what you're saying.
Just seems overkill. I know that we like to plan ahead. I know we like to have that extra there to make sure that we're covered, but
Exactly.
almost,
And that's part of it. I mean, I sit and actually calculate I can't project hours because
Right.
that can change from week to week, month to month. In that, I try to leave a factor, if you will. I think I said the first year I did budgets, my budget methodology is expenses to budget high, revenue budget low, and hope for the reverse. Hope that the revenue comes in higher than what you project, expenses lower. I think that in the end, I think that will be lower, but it does give me a cushion in that, in case chief comes to me and says, hey, our call volume just shot through the roof instead of 12%, now it's up to 20 and 25%. I need 3 more part-time. I can say, okay, I have a few more dollars squirreled away there. We can do this and add, no more, but we can do this. So that's part of it as well.
Okay.
And we're on in 107, account 107, 5220, 54420, the professional services.
Right.
It's for $70,500. In years past, it's been hovering around, honestly, between 0 and 2,000.
Right.
What's the jump in that one?
Part of that, as Chief has said, covers the different professional services, but also in that is the PR25 radio note. Of the $70,005, $52,000 of it's for the last payment we have to make out of the fire department budget. And then the last piece of that is the turnout gear. That's $16,005. So the difference between those two is basically what's left. If you back those two out, your professional service would be just about in line. I tried to show that, all that on one line there, and I know sometimes that gets confusing in that, but it's professional services, the PR radio note, and the turnout gear, all combined in one line.
Didn't we pay a note last year?
It's over 3 years.
I was going to say it was
2018, if you recall, we just had legislation to,
Right, so why is it reflected in 2018 but not 2017 under that same line? Because surely we didn't just pay $2,000 in 2000.
no. I'm sorry, Paul, it's actually it's part of the equipment lease in Reebok Squad, part of that 71.5.
Okay.
I apologize for that. When I started to run out of space, part of that should belong up above. I should have put it up so that it's consistent.
So this year, it's under one line as last year it was under a different line?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll make a note of that and try to recast that so it's. But we have paid this year $52,000. So the 67,049 is going to go down by 52,000 in December. And that when it's due to the bank by December 12th.
And this is our last one.
And then we'll re-up the last 100,000.
Oh, there's one more.
Yeah, 2018 will be totally paid in full.
Okay.
And as you recall, that's split 3 ways: service, police, and fire.
Chief, and how many miles are on your truck?
Mine, 63,000.
Okay.
It has a couple of bubbles on the hood that I'm going to have addressed in the spring, but other than that, it's a solid vehicle still.
Okay.
And they're going to stop supporting our heart monitors in 3 more years.
Who?
Physio Control, the manufacturer.
Okay.
We have LifePak 12s. They now have the LifePak 15. It's just like every other electric gadget.
Right.
Always bigger, better, and faster. As soon as you buy what you need, they change it. So, but the ones we currently have, we've had since 2008. We got those on a grant.
I was just going to ask that. Any grant money out there for the
We
upgrades?
wrote a grant for them. We got a reply that said it was very well written, but they ran out of funding before they got to us. We're competing with little tiny villages, and the grant writing's getting pretty fierce. There's a lot of professional grant writers out there now, so there's a lot of competition. But we did, and I will write again for it this coming year. I mean, it took us 3 or 4 years to get the truck, so I'm not going to give up after one rejection.
Mr. Fowler, is it worth looking at some of the local colleges for grant writing? Are there individuals involved in class that, almost like an internship, might be able to help us out?
We have, Ron budgeted an intern, actually, for our office to look at some of that work next year. And it's one of the items in my budget, but yes, we have talked about bringing an intern in just for that purpose.
Okay. How the hoses, things like that? I mean, any other equipment that you can think of that's going to need replaced?
We're going to have to purchase some supply hose after the first of the year, but it's not going to be a major expense.
Okay, are we ready to move on? If you'll turn to page 12.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Go Bucks.
Finance Department, not a great deal of change in this area. Basically, the two main things that I just want to point out this year, as I have every other year, I have budgeted for a deputy finance director. I would ask council to very seriously consider doing that. My budget has gone down 3.1%, but as I indicated last week, I'm growing older by the minute. I don't plan to be here an excessive amount, a lot of time in that. I think it behooves the city to put somebody in that capacity so that I can bring them along. Those of you that were on council when I came on recall that it was a very hard struggle the first year. I can't begin to tell you how many times I blew my kneecaps off in that, just not aware of things that I needed to do until I would get a call from somebody saying, do you plan to submit such and such a report? And I'd say, yes. What is it? And they'd say, such and so. When's it due? 4 months ago. I'm like, oh, and then I'd have to get right on it. So the first year was pretty much a trial by fire because I came out of the college sector, not out of the municipal sector. So there was a degree of turnaround and learning there. If council approves this, my plan is to start bright and early in January to start seeking applications and trying to fill that spot so that I can give that person the best possible training. And it would be my hope that upon my retirement that council would simply move that person up if they so see fit, or they could actually put it out and bid it again. It doesn't shut council off from doing that. The only other thing that that I have budgeted for, you'll notice under software purchase, last year we purchased the VIP software. There is we've now got that in place. That was paid for. There is a new analytic that's out, whereby Software Solutions, our software provider, basically will set up and program specifically for the city the budget, so that I can pull numbers right out of the VIP system. They'll drop in to the budget process. It provides us with a lot of analytical reports that I can provide to council. But the nice thing about it is, when you all approve this, I have to basically turn around and hand this to my accounting clerk and say, here it is. She has to key it in line by line by line by line. It takes several days to do, both the revenue side and the expense side. This software will help us so that when I'm done, all we have to do, and you approve it, is all we have to do is post it and it's in. One transaction, it's posted, it's done. So that's one of the biggest benefits of it. Other than that, everything pretty much the same.
Now, that VIP analytic upgrade, is it kind of like if you don't upgrade, they weren't going to support you on the old system there?
No.
Still
No,
support you on that?
the 9500, just below that, Dennis, the 9500, that's actually the software, maintenance
Okay.
software for VIP.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, out of that 13.5, it's about 13,000 for that analytic program.
Okay. So that's just like in a different module on the system?
It's a different
Okay.
module that we can purchase. I looked at it last year, but 56,000 was a big swallow.
Gotcha.
I didn't want to put it any higher. I pushed it off for a year, but I thought this would be the year to do it.
Okay.
Is Software Solution even up and running yet?
Oh, it's been up since April.
All right, what about all the other upgrades that we bought, like for the checkbook and,
Ohio Checkbook has, just late last week, has provided me with the update. I'm reviewing that now, and if I approve, that should be up before the end of the year.
On this 16.5 for this VIP analytics upgrade that you say it's going to save us several days from transferring everything over by hand.
Right.
Excuse me. How long is this 16.5 going to be good for?
They will hold that into the first quarter of next year.
Well, I guess I need to rephrase that. How long is the software going to be good?
Oh, I mean, kind of hard to say, because software's like everything else. They continually upgrade and do things in
It
that.
could be a couple of years. It probably, your maintenance software will just go up a little bit
Yeah.
next year because of the new module.
I don't anticipate any time that analytic software would run out anytime soon. I think we'll have that for a number of years.
I just want to make sure that we're getting our money's worth
Usually,
out of it.
But Dennis
usually they're
Spring,
good for like 8 years, 9, 10 years sometimes.
yeah, and unless they rewrite, add to it and upgrade it, and they continually do that. Software Solutions is a good software company, and they continually watch the marketplace as things progress. They like to rewrite their software and bring it up to speed. But Dennis makes a good point. The 16.5, well, actually, it's 13,000 out of the 16.5. Next year, we probably can assume that 95 for the maintenance will go up slightly, and that because now they'll have that other module in there, so their maintenance will go up slightly on that. So that number will go up next year a little bit, but not significantly.
If your plans are to move forward come January, want to search for a deputy director. Have we started to look at the job description as it stands now? What do we need to tweak or change going forward? Knowing what you know as far as your job, what jobs do we need them to take care of maybe that's not called out within that description?
Right. That job spec has been updated. I've updated it. When you mirror the two, they mirror very closely together. Basically, the deputy pretty much does everything that I do, and in my absence, basically operates in my capacity in that, so.
Wouldn't it make a lot more sense, if we know you're going to leave in March, that we hire a CPA in January instead of incurring all the cost of an ongoing full-time position and increasing the cost of the administration?
Who
And
said
then have to
anything?
do legislation later should council so desire to get rid of them. Why don't we hire somebody 2 or 3 months out and save some money instead of building another salary in?
Who said anything about leaving in March?
Well, I'm not saying if you were going to, instead of bringing on, face it, the city hasn't grown 10% plus or minus. And we don't even collect our own income tax, but we're going to bring on another full-time position, health and welfare and cost. Why not just hire somebody if you know when you're going to leave, a couple months out, and acclimate them to the process with their CPA? Face it, debits and credits don't change. They should be able to, I would think, pick it up relatively quick if they're qualified. And that would save the taxpayer money instead of creating another job.
It's a possibility.
I mean, I think that would be
A
a
lot
more
of-
efficient way to do it.
A lot of times what happens is when a finance director leaves, you'll get a lot of deputy finance directors that will apply. They have familiarity with their own city, but, there's things that are unique to us that, somebody that comes from Cleveland is going to see a whole lot more than what we see here.
Yeah, they got a bigger
Somebody
budget
comes
to
from
work with.
Copley Township down here is probably not going to see as much as if a village or a township. So there's plus and minuses there.
Well, what I'm thinking, though, if somebody has the 120 and they got the graduate degree and they've achieved their CPA and they have some background in the business, I would think that being it is numbers, they haven't changed, they should be able to pick it up quick. And that way we save the taxpayer the health and welfare cost and all the other contributing costs to that position. And keeping your budget, since you saved some money here, let's keep it down instead of increasing it.
Did I hear correctly? You're talking 120,000 for?
No, I said 120 hours just to get your accounting degree, and then you got to get your master's degree before you can take your test. So someone I would think would be fairly qualified at that point. I'm trying to avoid picking up health and welfare costs again. I'm sure folks understand that's not going down. And once the position's in place, it's typically government, they never go away. And I don't see overstaffing when we're trying to save money and we need money in other areas. So if we could compromise by bringing someone in a couple months before the departure, whoever is the finance director, would make more sense in creating another position. Because it's got to be budgeted every year, and I highly doubt, knowing government, that it would ever go away. And since we've not grown, it doesn't, to me, make sense.
And just so council's aware, we don't have to have a CPA. That's not a requirement.
Okay.
Is
But
it
I
in-
think it would behoove us to have somebody that does have a CPA, a certified public accountant, or equivalency in the public arena.
Is the proposal indeed for another full-time position? If that's the case, in health insurance, how is the budget going to go down? Also, it shows that you've added someone else full-time. Wouldn't that make it go up substantially?
That's a good point, Mr. Towsley. I'll make a note of that.
I have to be honest, for you to convince me that we need a deputy director, I guess you're going to have to do more to convince me because, and I don't understand the positions, but we've replaced the administrator this year, we've replaced the street guard superintendent, and we've created no positions ahead of time for those to replace them. So it seems like we're adding quite a big expense preparing for whenever that future is. It just seems like an awful lot of expense. I know everybody, I think it was everybody who ran for council ran on roads. And to be honest, almost every budget's up except for roads. And the reason we ran on roads is I think that's what the residents want. I know you want the deputy director, but I'm not sure that's what the residents really want. But
So
if you
is
can
it-
convince me that that's very necessary, then I'm with you.
And I'm not going to do that. I mean, that's basically on the back of council. When I retire, if there's nobody there, then that's up to you guys, and then you're in the same position you were before.
Just a question, how, like, if you decided to retire tomorrow, that could happen?
I can retire anytime I want.
Okay, so
I mean, I'm already
there.
I'm
so-
already drawing on 2 pensions now. I could retire tomorrow if I wanted to.
That's what I thought. Is there any way that we could do this with a part-time deputy director?
We could, if the issue that you have is whether you can find somebody
That would be willing.
willing to do part-time. That's the big issue. I mean, Mr. Pearson makes a good point. We could start, it's something we could bring back to council, say, I don't know what a good time to do that is. Here's the issue that, and until you've done it, you don't realize it, but in January, there's certain things you do in January. February, certain things, March. Each month, there's certain things that you do, certain reports, and you won't see them again until the following January or the
Right.
following March. It's something that basically you kind of need to see the ebb and flow of the chronology that that person has to do. Now, I think I've done a much better job than my predecessor in trying to leave notes as to that chronology, what's due when, so at least they can come in and say, oh, by January 10th, I need to do this, and, such and such a time, I need to do the alternative tax report. I need to have that in. To the county, there's reports in and out of the county all year long in that. I think I've left pretty good tracks that they can follow my tracks, to do that stuff. So it's entirely up to council. I'm throwing it out there. If council says no, they've said no in the past. I'm not here to convince you. If you're not convinced, that's fine.
Those are the things that you do that you don't have to come to us for. And then there's the many of them that we've come before us that we call basically boilerplate, that is also scheduled throughout the year, that some of those things have gotten away from us in the past. And then we're come in a hurry trying to get them taken care of, which I'm guessing that having somebody already familiar with these things would help us not go through that again.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Townsley. I think that $62,000 would be better utilized if we even hired a part-time grant writer for the city.
All right, so as of this point, I'm removing the deputy, just so everybody's aware.
You have written here that you have someone going to full-time, but there's no budget salary.
I'm sorry?
The next line down from your director?
She's going with administration, not with
Yeah, she went to the
finance.
That was
administrators.
part-time, so.
Okay,
That's basically Vivian,
right. Well, I didn't want to mention the name, but,
yeah.
all right, so she's going to go be fully under,
She's going to be under
Under the
Roberts.
administration.
She's going to be under Roberts. Okay.
Before we go on,
Yeah.
I haven't heard from the other two council people yet about just getting rid of the deputy director.
Well, my feel is if we do have one, I'd like to see him do some other duties than just,
Just do the
I would hate
finance.
to see them both do the same thing. I kind of agree with Paul a little bit on that, but if he would do, or she would do other duties also other than the finance, that would kind of make me feel a bit better, but two people doing one job, it probably is going to be I would see the citizens being a little upset with that.
Yeah, I mean, if they were going to take over some of the clerk's responsibility as well, and maybe some other functions, if I'm not mistaken, Laura was a deputy.
She was a deputy, then she was director. and
Right.
Then she went back to being a deputy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that there's some benefits, but just because they're a deputy doesn't mean that, you know, they're going to take the position as director if it opens up.
And that's, and you're right, that's up to council. Council might say, we want to open it up and advertise and see what else is out there. I mean, that's entirely within your prerogative to do that.
But I think it's always
It's the,
good, though.
the other thing, speaking to Dennis's situation, I've only got 2 clerks.
Yeah.
And it's a small department, so if one of those clerks stepped up and said, I want to be deputy, there is a possibility that we could potentially do that. I have one that is qualified, that has a college degree, has an accounting background, and would be qualified, but is that something that I basically do without advertising? I mean, I would have to at least post it in the city in that, just for union purposes in that, but I don't see anybody else being qualified, but I do have one in my department that is qualified.
Well, would a deputy director be in the union? You're not in the union.
I'm not in the union, and the deputy would not be in the union. So if it was one of those two, you'd kind of have a conflict there because they'd be part in the union, part not in the union, so that, I could see that being an issue. It's probably best that I just withdraw it, and we'll just go down the road and see how it works out.
I think it's worth addressing later on, but yeah, I think for now, that's probably the best path.
I will recast that with that out.
Didn't Mr. Moss do something with economic development as well?
I think he
When-
did, plus wasn't he associated with Wadsworth as well?
He was.
kinda
I
worked
think when
between the two.
Laura was the deputy director, Mr. Moss went into our planning and community development. She moved up as finance director at that time.
Great.
So, yeah, he kind of shifted gears on that a little bit.
Answer Mr. McGlow and Mr. Pilot's comment. If you're going to have somebody in that capacity, they don't need to be doing anything else but finance. And all of their energies should be geared towards finance. You don't want them doing odd jobs around the city. In regard to the union, if you're going to hire a professional person, they're not going to be in the union, you don't want to create another union position in any way, shape, or form. First off, I think you're better off to take another look at this. I did have a question, though. If we move personnel from under your budget, did her salary also, is that reflected in the administration's budget or still your budget?
That's correct. Her salary, Mr. Pearson, is reflected
40,000, isn't it?
on page 6. The third line down, clerk, full-time, and PS, that is also, there's funds in there for a intern.
So it should be working strictly for the administration, nothing in finance?
That would be correct. She helps with finance now. I mean, she's kind of,
Floats around.
yeah. All right, if everybody would turn to page 77. I basically have one item under the Cleveland-Massillon Road widening project. You see construction costs, $946,000, that's phase 2.
What page?
Page 77. Other than that, nothing really else changes, but the 946 is the estimate to do Phase 2 of the Cleveland-Massillon Road widening.
Is that the 10%?
No, that's the full 100% we have to pay up front, then get
And then we-
reimbursed.
Okay.
so I have to budget for all of it. You see my little note,
Oh, I see, yeah, thank you.
ODOT 9010.
We won't get reimbursed of that until the following year.
We kind of do it as we go along in that. So once we have expenses, I basically invoice them on a regular basis, and they reimburse.
So we
me
get several
back.
payments throughout the year instead of just one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, as they do progress in that, and they bill me, I pay, and then I turn that portion over to ODOT to be reimbursed 10%. In the road, you'll recall in the road budget, there was about 90-some thousand. I made a little footnote of that, added to the note, to the roads. That's what took it up to the 800 and, I think, 50 or 880,000. 90-some thousand of that basically is going into the roads, so that's why that budget, which makes our road budget about 10% of our budget, and that's what the general accounting standard is for budgets, 10%. If you can achieve 10% of your budget for roads, you're hitting the mark.
So on this 989,000, we're actually only paying 10% of this.
Right, 946, so we'd be paying about 94,006, 95,000 at round numbers. I still have to budget, though, Charlotte, because I have to pay the whole thing up front and then be reimbursed.
And this has nothing to do with sewers or anything. This
No.
is just strictly the road widening.
That's correct. If you turn to page 67, and this will be the last item I have tonight, you'll see the third item down, construction cost, Phase 2 sewer. It's estimated at $986,000. And I believe, if I remember correctly, that will run from Weber, Trotter, I believe, back to Gardner Boulevard. I believe it's running back that way to hook back at Gardner. That $986,000 is our 100% cost, and that will come out of Fund 128. Just like in Phase 1, it was almost $800,000 for the sewer down through there, and that came out of 128.
So did we just skip here to answer my question, or are we actually talking about this now?
Was that what you were asking me?
Well, yes,
The one on page 77 is a 90-10 split,
right,
but this one is 100% city cost.
right, I understand, just like the one we're looking at now for Phase 1.
That's correct. Which we've already paid. That's behind us. That's paid and over with.
Right. So are we done with this one and we're going on to this one now?
To 128?
Yes.
Yes.
All right,
Page 67.
Right, well, that's what I wanted, because I did have a couple questions about this. Aren't we supposed to be making a payment to Barberton on Nash Heights out of this?
That probably won't happen, I'm guessing, till what,
Until
2019?
2019?
Yeah, until they'll close out the loan and have the final principal amount and loan payment schedule be set. Probably 2019 will be the first payment.
Okay, and these Barber Road bills here, I thought we were pretty close to having those paid off.
Most of the other debt services I did have marked. I will research those. I thought I had them marked in my the payout dates, but I can get back to council. In fact, I'll email you tomorrow and tell you when those pay out.
Okay.
Question for Mr. Markey. That 127 account, this balance, does that reflect the monies in escrow?
For
From the Adair
127,
case?
yeah, the Adair case is now complete, so
Right, but I'm asking you, does this balance reflect?
127th is that's the cash position, so it's all the cash you have, right? I mean, you'd have to look at the cash position statement. I don't know what's budgeted. If you're looking at your budget book, it may not be a lot budgeted, but your cash position statement that you get every month will have the current cash balance on it. It's north of $1 million, whatever the amount
it's-
is.
So it's
Right-
still
right
in
now
an
it's $1.2
escrow
million.
account.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
It's still in an escrow account.
It's still held in the sewer fund, but now we're not holding it in escrow because the lawsuit is complete.
Right, and we have been talked about petitioning the courts to release those funds for,
Yeah, if
that ever
you.
been looked at.
Well, that's an option, right? I've not been directed to do that yet, but that's an option. You can file a petition with the court to move the funds. And that's for funds that are no longer needed for municipal, for the purposes which they're collected.
And it's also, in so many words, a dying fund because we're not collecting anything that's going to keep building that fund up.
And I apologize because we beat this over the head so many times.
Yeah,
But
sure.
that can't be used for Cleveland-Maslin Road, the 127.
For the sewer?
Correct.
But you don't own a sewer plant.
Oh,
I mean,
Yeah,
you don't
okay.
have a sewer, the monies should be transferred.
Right, that's the opinion
Somewhere.
I gave
They need
council
to be
before,
yanked.
correct.
Right,
Can't use
okay.
it for expansion. That's correct.
And Paul, the only reason I kept it 128, that was consistent with Phase 1. That's where we paid Phase 1 out of,
Right.
which was water and sewer improvements. Council, that's all I have tonight. At this particular point, I think I've hit the major pieces of the budget. You've hit all the big departments. You have 2 more sessions. I will bring an ordinance to you on probably next week for you to have in hand to vote on the 11th, which is your last session. Unless you have other questions, I really have nothing really more to present. Everything else is pretty much within tolerance of the previous years, and I'll answer any question that you might have. Feel free to email me through the week. When you email me, I'll be happy to answer all the council back so everybody's aware of it. But next week, unless you bring specific questions through the week, I'm going to anticipate that next week, unless you have something at the last minute, I have nothing further to present.
Thank you. Anybody else on that? If not, we'll move on to ordinance 92, 2017. Mr. Pelot.
Is this still under committee of the whole then?
Ye- Yes. I think we're just still discussing it. We're not going to really,
I don't think we had a price yet, I think.
yeah, we
that's-
don't have anything. We were talking like a percentage of 41, oh, that's right, I'm sorry, you weren't here. 41%, even as what was used in Nash Heights. Their benefit is close to $30,000 right now for the full assessment. So we were trying to determine how we could offset that in a more equitable way. And I had mentioned last week that these properties are actually going to benefit more from the sewer being through there than what it would in residential neighborhood, because we're looking at that to be the commercial corridor.
Right, but it's still currently residential. I see your point.
Some is and
Yeah.
some isn't, and it's very likely that it's going to get rezoned in the future. I know that this had been discussed at, if I recall correctly, at planning committees. Was it the planning? I believe it was planning meeting in the last year or so that I had attended. They've been going through the different zonings, which at that time, and this, it would just be a benefit per just property, unless it's a business that would be using more. So the residents would get the same deal as far, and they would have to pay up front, because it's not like they wouldn't be assessed. So does that kind of bring you up to speed a little bit? So that's, if anybody else has any ideas, Mr. Kernan, I think, had brought up a percentage basis.
Is it possible or even advisable, and probably this is for you, Mr. Fowler, to make different assessments based on the zoning?
think the benefit of this ordinance is we have some flexibility now to do that. There's always a concern of that disparate treatment argument from a property owner. That one of the concerns I would have is the commercial lots. Some of them get 3 benefits versus a residential lot which would have 1. So if you set the fee at $30,000 per benefit, a commercial structure with 4 benefits would pay $120,000, and a resident would pay $30,000. So I think by the percentage, by establishing that percentage, we accomplish that. And those essentially the commercial district is going to pay more based on the number of benefits.
Simply just because of
Yes.
Okay.
I had kind of looked at that and asked about it too, Paul, thinking that the businesses should pay more because they're actually going to benefit more
Right.
than what a residential. But when a residential, particularly if they've already been rezoned into a commercial type thing, when they go to sell, it's more than likely going to be to a business. So their property's going to be worth a lot more than
Right.
anybody's down in Nash Heights would be, particularly with the amenities that they have with the water, the sewer, sidewalks, and the street all getting redone. I mean, it's set up to go that way. And I just, like I said last week, there's no way I'm going and telling these people they have to spend $30,000.
Yeah, I agree
When
with
we
you.
just picked up like 15,000 extra on the Nash Heights people, and they don't even get the benefit of being assessed on their taxes. And we have to look at the fact that these sewers are in already. If somebody comes along and the health district says their septic system is done, they would have to be doing this right away, which is why we need to really look at this and work on it now and get something that we can live with as far as assessments go for the people. I do have a question on that. Are the laterals already in place for anybody like we did for Nash Heights and got them prepared for any of the residentials or things that are there?
I'm not 100% certain, I wasn't here, but I'm certain that they had connections put at each location. So when people wanted to connect, they could just connect. But I will confirm that for you and get back to you next week.
Thank you.
Jim Dabowski I'll just email Jim and ask him. And I may have that answer before next week, but as soon as I get it, I'll forward it to everyone.
Now, I'm going to be a real pain on this, but oh well. When we just got the assessment looking thing where it was summarized basically that there were 27 total assessments we were looking at currently, and it had listings of that. And I'm assuming that these prices were after we'd paid the 2% that the state basically says that we can pay up front. That's been taken care of. So that's not included on this assessment, correct?
The 2% plus cost of intersections, that's
Yes.
a concept for special assessments. Since we're not using a special assessment, it's not required by state law. I don't know if it was included or not. I'm just going to make the comment that's not required because it's not being specially assessed.
Okay.
So you could pass on potentially the full cost because it's not being specially assessed.
So there hasn't really, probably, very likely, there hasn't been anything taken off of this cost. It's the full cost up front.
I know the engineering firm was asked to make a calculation as if it was an assessment, so I don't know. I don't know.
Can
the
we
answer to
find
that.
out, please?
Sure. Mr. Fowler, do you add that to your, that we need to figure out if there was any of the city share of the improvement deducted from the overall cost?
Anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm kind of stealing your...
Nope, you're fine. It's opened up for discussion here. I personally think that we need to go ahead and set a percentage and just kind of stand by that across the board for future projects as well. That way people have at least an idea of what they're going to be paying for given projects to readdress it every time and go through all the motions here again, to me, makes no sense. You know, if we set it percentage based or even a fixed rate, at least a percentage allows for inflation in the future. I mean, to me, that's kind of the best way to go.
And when I was looking at this earlier, I believe the last cost we had for Nash Heights, the original assessment, and this would have been from April of 2016, was $26,456.54. And we brought that down to 11.2, so that basically we picked up $15,256.54. Can a mathematician, Mr. Messner, kind of tell me what that percentage would be then? By the 15, if we were to take 15,000,
It's 41.
Oh, 41% of the 15?
you know, what the 15 would, what percentage would the 15,000 be? Okay, this is what I was looking at. We knocked this down to 11.2. This was the original. So that was 15,000 that we actually did.
59 and 41,
Right, was Nash Heights.
Nash Heights.
So we
paid 57%.
really? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. That doesn't sound right.
What are you trying to figure out? Just
15,000.
Yeah, this is the original assessment was $26,456.54.
The city picked up
The city share on Nash Heights.
yeah,
57.66%.
the city share. I emailed you that spreadsheet
Yeah, it
earlier
was
in the week.
41% on
Right.
Nash Heights.
And that was based on the estimated assessments at the time that council passed the resolution of necessity, which sort of
Right.
set the baseline. So I mean, if you're looking for now, that's what I would use for now. I don't know what numbers you had.
Well, I took whatever.
So if we just take the 11
Yeah,
too.
there was a lot of numbers involved with that.
Right.
That's the problem.
And I don't
Back
think
and
this
forth.
was a percentage when we did it. We actually negotiated that because we had different numbers. And if I recall correctly out of that meeting, it was kind of, we were back and forth and arrived at a middle amount.
The 11.2.
Yes.
I don't think the 11.2 is based on a percentage. I think it was just a
No.
It was just
negotiated
pulled out of
amount.
the air.
Somewhere at 10.5, somewhere at 12. I think we split
11
maybe and
11.2 is 42% of the project cost.
Yeah.
City picked up the rest, 57.6%.
So we'll have more of this. We'll have the information about the laterals, and we'll know for sure what, if anything, that we've actually picked up or taken off the amount for the work session next week.
Yeah, we really can't come up with a hard number until the project's done and priced.
It's done,
Well,
isn't
this
it?
one is
This
done
is
and
for
priced.
phase one, Mr.
Phase
Towsley.
one's
So
done.
the
Oh,
project
okay.
is done, and we do have the final cost. I think
got
Ms. Whipke is making sure that there shouldn't be some city portion deducted out of it, or, whatever the real costs are. She
Right.
wants to know what that includes
Yeah, I
city
thought
share
she was
or
talking
not.
about the overall project.
That's why we're needing to do this, because if the
gotcha.
county comes in and starts telling somebody, we need to have some kind of a price for these people.
Yeah, the line's ready to be tapped, so we need to establish a fee.
Or else who knows where it'll go. What would happen if we didn't do this? They'd just get hit
Let's
with
just
the
pass our
30,000?
ordinance and not worry about it.
No, I think I understand the miscommunication. I'm saying until Nash Heights is done,
Correct.
we
That's
don't
correct.
know really what the real numbers are.
That's correct.
Right, but if we go with percentage, then, again, it wouldn't have to come back before council every time. The percentage would be set.
I'm fine with that, except we don't know what that percentage is until the final cost comes in, until we make a final.
Right, but if we look at Nash Heights as an example, the residents there were paying 42.3%. The city was picking up 57.6.
Well, if the project comes in like $1 million under, that depends what we do with that million. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
That number's gonna change pretty drastic if we don't stick with that
Does
percentage.
anybody else have anything else to add to this at the moment? Moving on then, communications from the public, do we have any?
No one had signed up.
Okay, thank you. Consideration of the minutes of the November 13th, 2017 regular council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections?
I had none.
Minutes are approved as submitted, and the minutes for November 20th, 2017 committee work session are deferred until December 11th, 2017. Reports from officers, boards, and commissions. Mr. Fowler?
Yes. For the next council work session, we'll have some legislation regarding the electrical aggregation. There was an RFP issued. I think the deadline was November 15th, so we'll have until December 15th to adopt a electrical aggregation rate for the city. It's a 3-year contract is what they're recommending, and I'll bring forth that information at the next meeting. I have something under good and welfare if you'd rather me wait.
Under what?
At the end of the meeting, you have public service announcements, good and welfare for the citizens.
Yeah,
I can wait on that.
okay. If it's not a report, then we'll wait.
Nope. That's
Mr. Messner?
I have nothing.
Attorney Markey?
I have nothing. Thank you.
There are no public hearings. There is no introduction of new legislation. There's no introduction for prior legislation, so we're moving on to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business come before council?
Yeah, question for you, Mr. Markey. What are we doing about the dollars we have tied up in them time clocks? Where's it at? You filed anything? Had there negotiations? Is anybody going to give us our cash back? What are we doing with it?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this a couple times. Probably be appropriate for executive session. I know you don't want to talk about an executive session. That's why you keep asking about it. At this time, because of the dollar amount, we've sent the letters, and if I'm directed to file a lawsuit, then I'm happy to do so. But until I'm directed to do something, there's not really anything else we're doing at this time.
So we had $18,000 of the taxpayers' money just floating around until we file a lawsuit.
That's correct.
And the company's not came back and made any offers, no resolution to give us our money or explanation why.
I think there was a letter back with an explanation, but I think we can get you a copy of that if you don't have it. Has council received that?
18 grand, to be honest with you.
I'm not
having
aware
any
of it.
value for
Okay,
what
we can get that
bought.
for you. Yeah.
I never saw a letter. Okay, clerk of council position and advertisement. Mr. Richard, I understand we did put forth some ads in the regular papers today,
Yes, we did.
and those will be going out, most of them for this weekend. And Mr. Fowler, I understand we really haven't had any feedback from anything?
I have not received anything as of today at 4:30.
Hence why we put them in the papers. So it's quite possible we'll end up having to do another meeting anyway. Back to the 3002 Haynes. We sent the application in, correct? Did we ever get the condemnation document that we was looking to get?
I have a letter from the inspector. I mean, I can forward that to everyone if you want. I got it last Monday.
We're not talking about from Mr. Brayman.
No.
Okay,
It was from
we
the
are talking about
outside
the one
company,
you-
yes.
Okay, the
Yes.
independent one.
Yes, ma'am. I apologize. I will get that to council. Thought maybe we did.
But that we did get it in time to submit it with them.
Yes.
I remember we got something, but I didn't think it was quite that. Anybody else under old business?
I just got something real quick. Johnson Road,
Yeah.
is it still happening?
Yeah. I talked to Mr. Hess prior to starting council. They're going to do it Wednesday.
Okay,
Part of the issue we had is we passed that last week, and we didn't get the purchase order on Tuesday, so they would start on Tuesday. So then we got bumped out because we didn't get the purchase order. And part of that's logistics. Part of that is we told you we were going to get the purchase order, but
Well, we got good weather, so
I know. But it's a little frustrating.
as long as we get it in.
New business, is there any new business come before council?
I don't know if it's new business, and I'm not sure if it was discussed last week, but I'd like to congratulate Ron and the Finance Department for the award of financial achievement again this year. 2 years running,
Actually,
or does it go back further?
it goes back further.
But very nice. And that was a certificate of achievement for excellent in financial reporting has been awarded to the City of Norton by the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada for its comprehensive annual financial report, CAFR. So, nice job.
Thank you.
Public service announcements. Are there any public service announcements? Mr. Fowler.
Yes, the chief of police contacted me today and wanted me to make mention of this. Apparently, some individual from Columbus is contacting our residents via phone and asking them to make a donation to the Shop with a Cop. Our Shop with a Cop donations should be made directly from an individual from the police department and not via phone donation. You should not be getting phone solicitations from any Norton police officer regarding this matter. So we ask the residents to be cognizant of those phone calls that might be coming in. Also, this Friday is the Christmas in the Park. Just a reminder for everyone.
Carla? Is that all?
Pajamas, books, still collecting, and cash and check. There is a slight change. I'm going to be taking the complete haul of delivery to a clerks association meeting I'm having on December 13th instead of the 15th. But if anything comes in after that, I'll still make sure that they get to the office in Fair Lawn.
Thank you. Okay, the next regular council meeting is December 11th, 2017. The committee work session will be held next Monday, December 4th. There being no further business to come before council, this meeting is adjourned at 8:42.
From any Norton police officer regarding this matter. So we ask the residents to be cognizant of those phone calls that might be coming in. Also, this Friday is the Christmas in the Park. Just a reminder for everyone.
Carla? Is that all?
Pajamas, books, still collecting, and cash and check. There is a slight change. I'm going to be taking the complete haul of delivery to a clerks association meeting I'm having on December 13th instead of the 15th. But if anything comes in after that, I'll still make sure that they get to the office in Fair Lawn.
Thank you. Okay, the next regular council meeting is December 11th, 2017. The committee work session will be held next Monday, December 4th. There being no further business to come before council, this meeting is adjourned at 8:42.